We have just read the readings for the Feast of the Ascension. And if you're wondering what does Ascension mean, well, you might consider it the day that Jesus began working from home. 40 days after Easter Sunday is always a Thursday, and we at St. Margaret's, like a lot of churches around, made the decision to transfer those readings to today so that we can celebrate the day that Jesus, the resurrected Jesus that is, returned to his home office. Now, the last time I spoke with you, we talked about how in this environment, in this world, what we are doing is the equivalent of playing sandlot baseball. We're no longer gathering in our large stadiums, i.e. churches. Instead, we are a dispersed community. Nevertheless, we still can play ball because wherever we see Jesus as our home base, our lives are shaped around his, just like baseball stadiums are marked out according to where home plate is set. But exactly where is Jesus these days, if he, like us, is working from home? And what is more, what difference does it make? During normal times, we might say things like, God's in his heaven and all is right with the world. But when all is decidedly not right with the world, we ask, where is God in all this? If Jesus is working from his home office in heaven, while the whole world is tossed to and fro with suffering, we suspect that God has left us to our own devices. Has God abandoned us? Or worse, is God punishing us? And since the human psyche abhors a vacuum, we struggle to fill in the void and to answer our questions with neat and tidy reasons. God is punishing the world for fill in the blank with whatever your pet bugaboo is. God is punishing the world because of the gays or the feminists. God is punishing the world because of abortion or because of climate change. What we say during these difficult times about the reasons for our current sufferings says a lot more about our own psyches and prejudices than about the nature of God. When we see God as an avenging angel, it's tragic because we are ignoring the clear picture of God that we experience in Jesus. Now, back in the first century, when his followers were trying to figure out the future, Jesus cautions them that some things are not ours to know. His words ring true for us now as well as for them. This is what he says. It is not for you to know the times or the periods where God our Father will completely restore his kingdom on earth. And then Jesus continues. Pay attention, he says, to the knowledge that you do need. You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes to you, and you will be my witnesses, he says. Our search for reasons why things happen, especially when bad things happen to good people, is natural, but not always helpful. When we come upon a forest fire, our first job is to secure our safety and that of those around us. We can figure out how it started later on when we are out of harm's way. So Jesus tells his followers that he will give them, that's all of us, the power of the Holy Spirit to witness to God's deliverance instead of pointing fingers at each other. And he must leave us physically in order that we can receive his power. It's been said by great thinkers that God is an intelligent sphere whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. Meditate on that a little bit. God is an intelligence whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. When we claim our belief that Jesus is present everywhere and yet is unbounded by the physical world, we embrace the ascension as both a fact and a promise. The fact is this, that Christ is everywhere present as the authority and power of God, a power which is both before us and behind us, as that great hymn, St. Patrick's Breastplate, says. A power which forever seeks our surrender to God's love. And then here is the promise. The promise is that when we discipline ourselves through prayer to expect that Jesus is everywhere in this muddled, mixed up world, and when we surrender our whole selves to his transformative love, then that sense of abandonment can be healed. Jesus has not left us orphans. The ascension answers the question that so weighs on our hearts when all is not right with the world. The ascension says that the very God who created the heavens and the earth does indeed still know, in and through the person of Jesus, what it's like to be human. In the very realms of heaven, wherever and however that exists, the resurrected Jesus, with scars still on his hands and feet and in his side, pleads and prays for each one of us and for the whole world. He has brought our humanity into union with God. So it's significant that Jesus returned to his earthly home in Bethany, where he spent so many hours with Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, and all his other followers. Where he spends time, he returns to that earthly home before he returns to his heavenly home. That place where he gathered, ate, taught, and rested must have held such powerful memories for him and his followers. But, as we see in the reading, it's time for him to leave in order that he can be most fully present to all people and all generations. We have done a similar thing. We've left many of our places of comfort, and we've shuttered the places where we gather and worship. We do so out of love, just as Jesus ascended so that his loving presence could be centered everywhere and circumscribed nowhere. There is a joy in this kind of leaving. As the great church father Augustine said, "Let our hearts ascend with him, for just as he remains with us even after his ascension, so too we are already in heaven with him, even though what is promised has not yet been fulfilled. We cannot be in heaven as he is with us on earth, but in him we can be there by love. For it is the presence of selfless love that creates heaven." The ascension, therefore, is the elevation of our very humanity into the heart of God. When we join with Jesus and his followers in the work that he is directing from his home office, we are already participants in the glory and bliss of heaven. We, the imperfect followers of Jesus, make him visible through our prayers, sacrifices, and service to others in his name. The poet Rainier Marie Rilke expresses the way that we meet the ascended Christ in this prayer of his. Only in our doing can we grasp you. Only with our hands can we illumine you. The mind is but a visitor. It thinks us out of our world. I don't want to think a place for you, O Lord. Speak to me from everywhere. When I go toward you, it is with my whole life. The work that Jesus began continues with him directing our work from his home office. Let us do our part in this great work. Let us move with our whole lives into God's kingdom here on earth.